All right. Quentin, you have the most interesting sort of maybe relevant news since you've had all your travels. I don't know how much we need to repeat.
Yeah, I don't know if anything I need to repeat here on this recorded forum, but basically it was a good event. Got to connect with some folks talking about e-filing, and there may be some things that are worth following up on there. Oh, here's something I can't say, like the source, because
Chatham House.
I've been told not to share the source. But there was at least one state that I learned about through our meeting today, which they said that they had a 40% rate of rejections for pro se e-filing.
Wow.
Versus like 1% for attorneys. So it just shows like how important it is to the work that we're doing to try to help integrate that with a fully guided process for folks, I think.
It's interesting.
Does that mean people tried to e-file and they couldn't?
That means that people
they did file,
and then the clerk rejected the filing.
Oh, I see. Because it was in all kinds of reasons, but you guess there's something wrong. They put some of the wrong data in or something like that.
I suspect that there's a number of places where it's failing. Like they chose the wrong form to file that they weren't supposed to use for their situation, or they filled out the form incorrectly, or they left out some metadata. I guess those are all things that, you'd think maybe could be caught by using a fully guided process where you're just doing some data quality and screening up front. And my guess is that would cut down a lot of the mistakes.
Do they have a rate of rejection? I mean, do courts have a rate of rejection for self-represented non-e-filing?
That's a good question, and I don't know that. But I think a lot of those errors might be caught by a clerk in person, right? So it's not like a feedback
but I think
loop.
that's you kind of need that information. I mean, that's why we're doing what we've been doing for the last 20 years, because self-represented litigants are getting rejected all over the place to begin with, right? So
right.
I think that's an important. I think it's a really helpful number, and it's pretty dramatic. But at the same time, it's good to know what happens in IRL, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that number may not be the number of a fully rolled out e-filing system too. There's a lot of factors that might make it so high. But yes, I agree. That's one of them. It's how does that compare to people filing in person?
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that kind of rejection, clerks don't call someone back and say, "Oh, sorry, we're throwing away your filing," when someone's finished handing it over so often. But
they don't get it.
They might have a conversation with the person.
They don't get an error message or anything?
Well, they get an error message, but then they don't have someone saying, "Oh, and the problem you made was this."
Oh, I see. Gotcha. It
So
just gets denied, and God,
I mean,
that was sickening.
There might be some, and I'm sure some people go out of their way to maybe add a little note or something. But my suspicion is that even if the rate of initial there was a problem is similar between in-person and remote, the fact that it's an asynchronous experience probably leads to a lot fewer people who are rejected online actually correcting whatever the error was.
Yeah. Yes, and the error message, if it's automatic, may be completely misleading or unintelligible anyway.
Yeah, I think that's right, because they're usually pretty general, would be my guess, the kind of reasons people can give.
Error 410-006.
Hopefully not that bad, but it might be like information missing or something, right? They're choosing from a generic list of reasons.
Incomplete information.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so anything else? Any questions for management?
Quentin, you put some stuff in Teams, didn't you? Didn't you?
What did I put on Teams?
I thought you did, and then I added.
Oh yeah. What did I put? The data dictionary. That was something that was shareable. People have ideas. I don't know how important the data dictionary is going to be to this project that Stanford is doing, but they're building a list of form fields for people to use inside a name change petition. Yeah, I'm not sure that that's the task people need the most help with for doing this. I did point out to them that their standard convention like isn't that there are things that aren't variable names because they have a hyphen in them. There was some discussion about whether it should be a flat versus object or graph based way of representing the fields, where some people were saying they liked flat because they could import it as a CSV and attorneys can react to a spreadsheet with a list of variable names in a flat CSV. But of course, things like NEAM, generally people use graph structures for this kind of thing, and that maps really well to what DocAssemble does with objects. And we're obviously relying on objects for that kind of stuff. So they were doing things like name first hyphen plaintiff. And that was one field. And like address, city, plaintiff. And again, like, so you don't have a way to link the different variables together or know what the relationship is. And, you know, my thought is having them be related is something computers are really good at and can make better use of than a bunch of flat stuff. But on the other hand, I don't think we would use the data dictionary, so it may not really matter. But it's interesting anyway to think about it, because if someone's building like kind of a standard around this, it makes sense to figure out how to support it or align it in some way with what we're doing, even if we're not going to change the way we're doing things to align with it.
Michelle's got a question there.
Two thoughts. One is, like, have they been introduced to YAML, which is a friendlier way than something like JSON, to look at some of this information? And another is that, you know, we have naming conventions that turn _name_first into what they need to be as far as variables go. So both of those are
thoughts. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, they could have a two-way convention for like flat and turning into the objects. There's probably a problem with the way that they're ordering their annotations though, and like putting like plaintiff at the end versus the beginning, make it harder to parse. Well, not dramatically so, I guess.
Well, I mean, if there's a comment period or like an advising that's going on, that could be a comment that might be more in line with how they're doing things.
Was there any discussion of adopting existing data
I did kind of,
structures?
that was said, like, if, you know, a few people were like, why don't you just use NEAM since you're trying to like base it around NEAM? And NEAM is a graph that's built on RDF, so you could extend it. You don't have to like reinvent the wheel there. But I think a reason for reinventing the wheel is the folks that like to be able to import a flat CSV and look at it, right? So to the extent we're trying to describe like 30 or 40 fields, and the way that you can do it in a flat list is easier, then certainly the overhead of understanding NEAM and RDF, I can see the reason why they might say, okay, we're just going to do it from scratch because it's such a short list of things we're trying to describe.
Yeah, the classic XKCD came to mind.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
But Michelle, your question about like whether you can comment it, that's what I shared on Teams. So you can look at the survey has a link to the actual data dictionary. So you can open the data dictionary, which is an Airtable, explore it, and then you can provide your feedback on the survey.
I mean, I don't think my feedback, I don't think they want the feedback of a random.
You're not a
So
random.
you're not a random
You're
person.
someone who's been working
true.
in this space for quite some time and has opinions in opinions that you've developed through your expertise and practice.
It's true. Maybe worth a shot.
Yeah. And again, like there's only so much energy to probably spend on the data dictionary. I don't think most of the people that were there were thinking, yeah, we're going to directly import and use the data dictionary as is. It's more like a reference of what are the things that the form is using. that be useful, but probably not
Yeah.
like a wholesale import for anybody. So
I think it'll provide a point that people can map off of onto their own, and then also a enumeration of the common fields, the common data.
exactly. That's, I think, the most important part of it.
And to that extent, it's probably not worth overthinking it, because I don't think any of these, I think that means that none of these entities are going to full scale adopt it as a standard. And so it's not, I think it's it's trying to help, it's giving a common language that we can all agree, these are the 5 things we need.
Yeah. I mean, it did make me think, like, we have so much of that data accessible to us from our data set of real forms. So, like, are there ways we should be thinking about expanding? We started with, like, what's the smallest subset of fields that are shared? Should we be thinking explicitly about how to build that outwards and make it cover more kinds of things people are doing with it?
This is where I think, like, Sally is, I don't know, Quentin, you should check your email. I know you got one from the Sally folks for the API working group.
Right.
Yeah, they might
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll be able to attend it, but hopefully.
Yeah, well, they put out a
Everyone
doodle
should
with a
go.
lot of dates.
Right.
So
Ones that in November are, like, more likely I could attend than anything.
Yeah.
else.
It took me a while to realize that it kept going. Like, I can't. Oh, it keeps going. It keeps going. So
Oh, I wonder if I went far enough out. I think I did. I was thinking on my phone, so I might have.
Yeah.
I know on sometimes, like, at the next link may look differently on a. Anyway, yeah. I
So
guess
that-
that's it, though.
all right, cool. Caroline, anything for management?
Quentin I put it into Teams because I don't remember why I saw this, but Quentin, you were talking about the no label issue, and I'm curious about that because there are lots of times I use no label because I think the question is clear and you get. Anyway, I saw that discussion between you and Bryce. There was something I thought was really good to talk about in Management Monday, and I cannot remember what it was. It was like 2 weeks ago, and I thought, perfect. And I just can't get back to it. But I also
the
saw
thing you
your post
posted in
about the
the-
no label. Pardon, Michelle?
Did you post it in the admin channel? You posted
No,
something in
I
there.
came to Teams to
okay.
post it and then forgot it. I just don't remember what it
Fair
was.
enough.
It hasn't come back to me. But when I went to Team, somehow, maybe Quentin, I don't know if you I don't remember where I found it. Maybe I was looking at the interview, but you raised this issue in GitHub. I guess on the assembly, I don't even know what thing it is, about having no label on the fields. And there's a little discussion between Quentin and Bryce. And Quentin, you said that might be a good thing to talk about in Management Monday because I wasn't clear how you ended up with it. And I know that I use no label quite often because I think the question is there. I can't, anyway, I just wasn't, I just wanted a little bit of clarification on what we think about this. Because did this come from the principle and theory report, or this is WCA 3 bloody blah? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a W tag thing. So this was interesting. I don't remember who. One of our discussions made me add this issue. I didn't create it. I think I was just being the scrivener. And then I went to go to try to solve it. And I was like, some of these are really hard to rephrase in a way that makes sense without repeating the title twice, which is confusing to people.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then I just tried it on a screen reader because Bryce was showing me how to do that the other day. And it's like, oh, well, this actually is not hard to do. It's really easy. I don't know if you're in Windows and you just type screen reader.
Mm-hmm.
So you just open up narrator, turn it on, and then you can just try experimenting. What would it look like with different things with the screen reader? So you can see like what will the user's experience be. And it seemed like they were all equivalent and really easy to follow to me, no matter how we wrote it. So these are the 3 ways I tried. Using choices and field. I think that seemed like it might be the best way. This is the way we do it most of the places. Just with the field statement and then no label. That was the one we were saying we should get rid of, but we have
Yeah.
a ton of those in our code.
Yeah,
And the other one was repeating it twice.
Right.
And I like couldn't really tell like a functional. And then the thing is like, how do you rephrase it so this is different from this? 'Cause
right. You have
that
to
seems
ask
weird
the
to
same
repeat it
question in
twice.
different words or have a general, exactly. So what did you find that the middle one actually works okay in a screen reader?
Seemed fine to me. I felt like it was really equivalent. Like I tried navigating up and down and seeing like, what would it be like? How would you find this? Would you have the context when you got to it? It
Yeah.
seemed like you would. But Bryce says the problem is it's going to be marked as being wrong in WCAG. Well, at least that it's not following the rules. I don't know if automated checkers will catch it or not. I didn't check that.
And
Could
that,
this be solved by alt text? We could have an alt specifier under a field.
oh,
Well, that's not like the traditional thing for alt text is usually for images, but like maybe we would call it like ARIA or something like that, but I guess it's maybe the same idea. Yeah,
An
Bryce
ARIA
thinks that it could be
label
changed by
type thing.
automatically putting the heading of the page into the ARIA labeled by element here. So the question is like, is an automated way of doing it okay? Because that could be an upstream change in DocAssemble.
oh, I see.
Or your thought, I think, Michelle, was to say add a modifier on the question that
What
lets you
would
add
that
the
look
ARIA
like
text.
if you did that?
The version that I'm describing, summarizing Michelle's version of it. Is that what you mean?
No, the ARIA labeled, I mean, that's what is that the same thing? Michelle's saying add a
You could
character,
have aria dash label colon in there, right? Under
Right.
field
where would you,
or under fields, like the
me
first
just
one,
put
it
it
might
into,
be
like,
under field. Yeah,
So something like this.
oh, I see. Gotcha. So it's all, these are all, what are you calling modifiers? Yeah, okay. So you just you can repeat the question,
But then it won't be visually on the screen for everybody
Right.
to be annoyed by.
right?
Only for
And
people
that's
with
the thing.
screen. I guess.
ARIA labeled by is what you put in there. Okay.
I mean, you can't yet, but that would be the suggestion for Jonathan.
Are you, right, but if you were gonna do that
I think
yourself,
it wouldn't be labeled by because,
It'd probably just be
that needs
ARIA
an
label,
idea.
maybe.
yeah,
Maybe we could
Right.
do labeled by, but then we'd have to come up with like some way to say question, sub-question. I don't know. It'd be weird to come up with the
Yeah.
way to reference it. Yeah, because I think you're right. Labeled by implies you're saying this field gets
Where
a
it's
label
coming
from this
from.
other thing on the screen. And then
yeah.
how do you say what the other thing is?
But what were you saying, Caroline?
that's all. I was wondering what it would look like. Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, so what I know what it's saying is you're talking to Jonathan about doing it upstream in Docker. It happens automatically. But I was curious to know if we did this manually, then that would be okay until he does that. He incorporates that into DocAssemble.
There is
Right.
no ARIA label right now. So
Oh.
you would have to just put the label in there, which I was trying to do it for our questions like, is there another, are there any? And it just was very awkward.
Is ARIA Jonathan's thing?
No, ARIA is a W3C thing.
So, but there is no ARIA so when you say there is no ARIA label, you're proposing that,
yes.
because-
a new
ARIA label
modifier.
exists in the world, but it's not something you can add as a modifier in a DocAssemble interview. yet.
oh, I see what you're saying. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
You could also make the question more of a title, I mean, the question modifier, more of a title that says something like,
Well, yeah, that's what I was trying.
your
And I found
side
very
of-
hard to do. But
yeah,
yeah,
like your case. And then it says, is anyone else on your side of the case?
Yeah, but
So
that's
it's
an
not really
editing
repeated,
thing
but
for
it's
people.
annoying. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, people struggle enough as it, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, and for so many reasons, we're trying to have fewer words, right? And so that's a requirement to add more words into a question. I mean,
Yep, I'm not saying as an eventual solution, I'm saying as
Right.
a
Yeah.
temporary.
Yeah, and
But-
what I wanted to figure out was, like, as far as I can tell, people with the screen reader don't have a bad experience with this, but we do need to align it with the standards if it's going to be flagged by a automated checker.
mhm.
And then we also have to figure out what's the reason for that being part of the rules, even if it's not being taught by an automated checker. Like, are we sure we're in compliance with it? Or obviously, I'm not a professional, someone who uses a screen reader every day. So me running it and thinking, oh, it reads really clearly and easy to answer, doesn't mean that it's right. But
There's a guy who presents on this stuff every year, Derek Feather, I think his name is, at an event apart. I wonder
Okay.
if we could get in touch with him and explain the problem and see what he has to say about it.
yeah,
He's like accessibility expert.
I mean, I feel like we might, that sounds like a really good connection to have in mind, but I feel like we might know enough from the docs to know what we need to
What was
do.
that? Quentin, what was the last thing you said? What did you say?
We might have enough from this documentation about it
Oh,
that says what it's supposed to be to know
I
what to
see.
do. We just have to decide
okay.
what I feel like it might not be fair to ask someone like that to their opinion.
Yeah.
For where we are with it right now.
Okay.
But maybe.
Does it, I mean, would it be, if Jonathan added that, would that take care of it?
That might be something for us to check, like, just to make sure.
I mean,
Our idea of
everybody would
fixing it
have
is
to
okay.
know to do it to make it accessible. So I think there are
Well,
things that are
yeah.
non-ideal about that too, but
No, so
be better.
what Bryce is saying here is he said that the situation is to improve upstream and he's to link the group to the label. And it says if there's no author given label, use the page header. So I think that's an interesting idea. So it's like, can you just automatically say this field? Sorry, let me switch back to the right thing.
So does
This
that mean if
field
you
is
put
labeled
in
by
no
this.
label, so if you write no label, automatically an ARIA label shows up?
And make it be the question, I guess.
Yeah,
Or it would be ARIA labeled by, just to make sure you can see they're connected to each other.
right. I mean, I suppose if Jonathan did that, what would be cool is if Jonathan did that, but also added the ability to put ARIA label in. So if you decided you don't want the automatic, so the question would go in automatically. If you know enough that you could put the ARIA label in and change the text slightly, say it was something in the sub question, then you could, because the problem with that is what happens if you have more than one field? I mean,
Right.
you probably would have a label if you had more than one field, but I'm just thinking to give you a little bit more control, Jonathan could put the ARIA labeled by in automatically and allow the developer to put in ARIA, and then that would, ARIA label, and then that would, I don't know how complicated that would be.
No, I like that idea. Like, it does seem like it's a yes and then, like, there is this situation, right, where you have like a note, then you say, like, write the name of the whatever, and then you have the no label underneath. So this would be the label associated with this.
Yeah,
People do that a ton, but I think it's fine for me just to say don't do that, because now there's another modifier that exists
Yeah,
already that's like
exactly.
label above field. True. So if the reason you're doing this is to have more room to do formatting and to make it above the field rather than to the left of the field
I've
on
never
desktop,
seen that.
I think-
That's great.
I think people might use that
So-
to use Mako in their label.
but you don't need to. But these are all situations where someone might use no label. they really don't have to anymore because of the label above field modifier.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as a note. You have as much
Uh-huh.
room to write as you do in a note.
Oh, so you can do a line
Yeah.
to write the text somehow?
So
How do
yes,
you-
you
how
could
do
have
you
a
write it?
longer, so it's not this little thing, little teeny space where your label's squished in.
You just write label like this if you want to have more
Got it.
room to write what you want. That's always been there. The new
Oh,
thing is
got
the
it.
label above field modifier. It's not that new
Okay.
anymore, but it was part of the accessibility audit that I think Bryce pointed this out to Jonathan, and then he added that
Oh,
modifier.
I didn't even know that was there. That's very
Nice.
cool.
So it wouldn't work for this, but like, I think that's the only, when people put a field and no label in the middle of a list of fields, they're always either using label above field or they're using note, and they should switch to using label above field. So that solves that problem pretty well.
Hmm.
It's really just the one field on the screen. And
Yeah,
it does seem like the question is always the right thing to label it by, right? Maybe you could say question and sub question together. Combine those as one group.
your sub question might be a paragraph though. And you've already been, it's already been read to you. I mean, if you're doing a
Right.
screen reader, so then you have to listen to it twice.
Good point. I mean, whatever we do, we just need to make sure people can have the things look visually right on screen and then know how to set them up the right way
Yeah.
for the reader. So if we say you can use the question field as the aria with no label, but you can't use the sub question,
Right.
that restricts the way people will use
Hmm.
that label, but it feels not too hard for people to interact with. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people will sometimes have the broad thing as the question text.
And then
And the-
narrow it down and sub question.
Yeah.
I feel like I've just done that just recently.
So maybe aria label still a nice modifier to add. Maybe there is a reason too to like, maybe you want to use images in the label, and then you need to use aria to better do it. So maybe this is useful for other kinds of situations where the
Mhm.
text, whatever you show the people who are cited, is different from what you want the aria to be for the label of that field. Okay. Well, anyway, I'll write that. I'll write down that idea.
All right. Is there anything more that for management?
This was really yours, Caroline, right? So I guess, yeah, I took over explaining what the issue was, but it was your.
Well, no, it was, I mean, it wasn't mine originally. It was somebody's idea. You put it into a GitHub issue. I thought it was really interesting and helpful. So yeah, it was mine because you brought it up. And I still can't remember whatever my idea was. So it'll have to wait.
Always so nice when people reflect us back to us.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see, I kind of lost track. Caroline, anything else? I think that's
No.
where we're at. Okay. Michelle. All right. Then that is probably, that is management. I'll
That's
stop